Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Schaberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We're happy to be back with you this holiday week. Hope everybody is refreshed from their holiday weekend. Maybe the rain stayed away for a little while, I guess. So today we are here with Partners Resource Network Region 6, Gail Wright, and we appreciate Gail giving this opportunity for us to work with their organization. Partners Resource Network is a wealth of information, parent training, resources, a myriad of things for help for families with loved ones with disabilities. So if you're not familiar with Partners Resource Network, certainly get familiar with them. Today's meeting is being recorded. Your cameras and your microphones are muted, so we can't hear you and we can't see you, but we do want your questions. So if you have questions today, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll get to just as many of them as we can. And so having said that, then we're going to get started. So again, Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs planning firm. We really custom design plans for people based off of their needs, wants, and goals, and their unique situation as it relates to their special needs loved one. We put out a lot of educational webinars as it relates to special needs and planning and topics. Any number of topics around that. And we do actually have a YouTube channel where you can find past recordings if you've missed them, if you've missed them previously, where you can go back and and listen to the ones that might be relevant to you. We have all things as it relates to guardianship, special needs trust, Social Security, SSI, Medicaid, waivers, all of the buzzwords that come into the realm of planning for special needs. But so today what we're going to be talking about is a letter of intent and why you might need one. So for some, you may have never heard of a letter of intent. Others, you've heard of it and it's kind of been on your radar that you wanted to get it together and you wanted to to do a letter of intent, but you didn't necessarily know how to get started or what to do. So from a professional perspective, we work with special needs all day long, all day, every day. But from a personal perspective, I'm a mom to 4, and I have 2 kids with special needs. I have one that is still a minor, and then I have one that has crossed over into adulthood. So these challenges that you face as transition, maybe, with the number of people that are on, we've got any number of situations where maybe you are newly diagnosed, you have a young child, a new diagnosis, you may have an older child and you're thinking about transition and next steps, or maybe you're aging and you have, a 40-something or 50-something-year-old adult with special needs that you're thinking about next steps of when I'm not here or when I can't care for him anymore. So this letter of intent is something that you're going to want to put together. And this is basically, it's really about the planning for the future of your child. So there's a lot of things that come into planning for the future of your child. And honestly, as special needs parents, a lot of us are swimming with all of the these that need to happen. Why do I need a special needs planner? Okay. What about a special needs attorney? Do I need both of them? So these are things that we address as well. And the answer, quite honestly, is yes, you need both, because when it comes to special needs planning, a special needs attorney is going to help you with those important documents. Those documents like guardianship, legal documents, special needs trust, and other things that you might need to have in place to ensure that your child maintains eligibility for important benefits such as SSI and Medicaid. Okay. But a letter of intent is a little bit more personal. Okay. So this is really speaking of your intentions and your heart. Sometimes we refer to this as a family love letter. Okay. A love letter to somebody else. And it really just ensures that your trustee or future guardian knows your child's functional abilities, routines, interests, particular likes and dislikes. And so that sounds simple enough, but it's really not so much. So what we see is we have a lot of families. Sometimes we have a family member that stays home with a special needs individual, and we've seen a lot more of this, especially post-pandemic, right? During the pandemic and pandemic, we've seen a lot of people step out of their workforce or kind of go home. But as a parent, whether you're mom or dad, as a parent, you know things about your loved one, your special needs child that nobody else knows. And what we have found is that sometimes even mom or dad, whoever that caregiver is, knows things about the child that the other parent, even though that they live in the same household, doesn't know, because it's just something that the parent that's doing the caregiving just handles, and they don't bother to give all of the gory details to the other parent. So the reason you need a letter of intent is, what if you can't talk? What if you are incapacitated? What if you are gone? What if you're deceased? And if you're the primary caregiver, whoever that primary caregiver is, that loved one, what we're trying to do is provide a continuity of care. Depending on the disability, some of our kids have very complex care needs, very complex medical needs, or maybe things are better, but they have a very, very complex history that somebody certainly needs to know about. Okay, so this is getting it down. I kind of use that phrase of, you have forgotten more than anybody will ever know as it relates to caring for your child and what their needs are. But this is something that you've got to take time and you've got to get it down. You do this off the cuff. It's like second nature to you. This is just your life. This is how you roll. But this isn't how somebody else rolls. So if something happens to you, this document ideally is a document that they can pick up and they can page through and they can really understand from the beginning the deal, everything as it relates to your child, and then additionally, what your wishes are. So some of the questions that we get on a pretty regular basis is, do I really even need a letter of intent? I mean, if I have a last will and testament, I have a revocable trust, I have a special needs trust, I have guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, do I really need a letter of intent? And I think the answer is yes. If it's important to you, and I have not met a parent yet that it's not important to them that their child's needs be met. I mean, there's a method behind all of our madness and what we do in caregiving for our kids. It's because you want their needs met, or the sacrifices that people make where one person is staying home and those types of things. So again, this document is really going to communicate your knowledge, including specific hopes and desires for your child and well-being. It's going to identify diagnoses, health history, medications, treating physicians. I like to get more personal. So when we talk about likes and dislikes, allergies, etc., what makes the child tick? What makes them melt down? What are the things that, if you want the good life, this is what you do. And if you want the bad life, don't make this mistake. I mean, it could be something as silly as the blanket that has the silk on the edge on it. It's not just any blanket, it's the blanket. Little things like that, whatever that might be, certain foods or things like that. Okay, so the letter of intent, I mean, there's just a lot of things. And what we have seen is people can create these things themselves. We do have a template that we share with our clients, and it's actually not a short template. It's 20 pages, if you can actually believe that. So the first thing I would say is, if you don't have a letter of intent, it's totally okay. You're here today, so it's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. But this letter of intent is a process. This is not something by the end of this call that you have a letter of intent, and that it's all together. This is, if you've got a kid that's transitioning, they're turning 18 or whatever their age is, there's been a lot of years, a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of history that needs to be documented. So family information, even breaking down, where was the kid born? Okay, where were they born? What county were they born in? What hospital were they born in? That's good information if they ever need to seek a birth certificate. That's some good information to know. Medical history and care, list of diagnosis, any surgeries, any hospitalizations, name, address, phone number of every physician that they've had, their pediatrician. We're going to talk about schools, special schools, private schools, public schools, different schools that they've been in, different programs. any government benefits that they're receiving, any living arrangements, accommodations, and also even future plans. Like if we have a future plan of what we want for future living arrangements. So we're talking about employment history, personality, habits, just everything that could possibly relate to your child goes in this document, and that's why it's 20 pages long. And what I will tell you is, we hear that going through the guardianship process can be a pretty emotional process. Going through guardianship can be emotional because essentially when you're going through a guardianship process, you are taking rights away of your loved one. And so that's the sad part. It's the hopes and dreams that didn't come true. It's not what we had in mind, but it's what needs to happen given whatever your situation is. And this can be an emotional document that you're completing because it's kind of going backwards. It's going backwards in time of where you've been, where you're going, what the future looks like. And some of us have kids that are transitioning that we're still hopeful and optimistic that there may have some semblance of semi-independence in the future, or some will be independent. Some the jury's out on, and then and many of the families, we're crystal clear that the individual will never be able to live independently. So kind of looking back on some of those things can be a little bit, like I said, emotional. But so what I would say is give yourself some grace. If you don't already have a letter of intent, you can create one online. We do recommend it using a word processor on your computer, like Word or something like that, as opposed to having like a handwritten notebook. We're going to want to revisit this letter of intent a couple of times a year. If you have kids that have complex medical needs that are ever changing, then you might revisit this a little bit more often. But, doing it twice a year is kind of a good time, a good thing to look at. It depends on how, I know people look at their finances, I guess monthly, but like if you really do a deep dive of how much money did we spend, where's the money going, what's happening, if you do that annually, maybe this is a time, or semi-annually, that you would add that to your list of things that you're doing. So any kind of legal documents that you have, special needs trust, guardianship, and any kind of important information, life insurance, bank accounts, any kind of things that would be relevant to funding a special needs trust or funding future care for your child, that's all going to be important in this document. So let's see. Okay, I just wanted to see if we had any questions. Okay, so, and I'll come back to that on alternatives. Somebody asked a question about alternatives to guardianship. So this is an example of our special needs letter of intent workbook, which we'll share another, we'll share it on the screen and kind of give you a further example next. Let's see, I seem to have issues. Well, maybe I don't. So as it relates to the letter of intent and special needs planning, what we know for sure is that when it comes to special needs planning, this is a hard job. It's hard, it's confusing. There's all these buzzwords that people throw around, and all we know for sure or what we hear and what we think is that if we accidentally do anything, that they're going to lose SSI and Medicaid. Okay, so that's one of the things that we hear over and over and over. So we're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, so we can help as it relates to SSI and Medicaid and what to do and what not to do. But one of the things that is very, very important is about having money in the right buckets. But when we're coming around the bend and we're talking about all of these things and all these moving parts, it's a little bit exhausting. And so what we want to say is how important it is that you take care of yourself. Okay, we're so busy taking care of everybody else and being a spouse and being a parent and being a full-time worker, being a full-time caregiver. What we know is as we're twirling all of these plates, so that basically 53%, over half of the people that are doing this, say that their own health has declined and has affected their ability to provide care. So the reason that this is important and having this letter of intent is we don't know when. Our hope is that we're going to stay well and we'll be able to provide the care that we need for these kids for as long as it is that you want to. But we don't know that. We're not guaranteed that. People get sick, people die, people have illnesses that render them unable to care for their loved ones. And what I would say is, like, taking these steps and kind of planning sooner versus later. So for lack of a better word, if you're late to the party as it relates to planning, it's okay and you're not alone. So that's the first thing that I want to say is it's okay and you're not alone and you're here now. And it's never too late to get started. But the sooner you get started on these processes and these things and these steps that you need to take and review, the more likely that you're going to reach your goal of having your child's needs met and the care that you want for them in the setting that you want for them, the more likely that is definitely going to happen. So we just want to encourage, wherever you are in the planning process, some people have done a little bit and then they got busy, life got busy, the pandemic happened, whatever, and they put it on the shelf and they didn't look at it anymore. Other people never got started. They felt like they had to be rich to get started, so they never even got started. And some people have done a lot of planning. Maybe they already have guardianship in place. Maybe they already have special needs trust in place, but maybe they're not sure about the right buckets, or maybe they need help applying for SSI and Medicaid. So that's where we come into play, and we can help you with that. So again, on the financial planning side, the special needs planning side, that's where Consolidated Planning Group comes in, and that's who we are, what we do. And we work closely, not only closely, but we also refer to special needs planning attorneys that will help you with those documents that you might need, whether it be a special needs trust, maybe if you're a person that doesn't have a will, or your will hasn't been updated in many, many years, guess what? You're in the masses of the 97% of people are either don't have a will or they have a very old one that really needs to be updated. So these are all things that the special needs attorney can help you with those things. So we just wanted to kind of hit on some of those things that should be on your radar as it relates to special needs planning. These are some of the things that we've already talked about. One of the things that we do is a comprehensive special needs care plan, where we can develop a future care plan for your child that identifies how much money, what is it going to look like, how much does it cost, how much do we need to set aside, and we can do those future care cost estimates. But this is in addition to helping a person plan for their own retirement. Okay, so what we see is typically 25 to 35 years is the timeline that a person is going to spend in retirement. So if you're married, that's 2 people. And then if you have a special needs child that's going to need care for the rest of their life, it's really possible that that's like a third retirement, 25, 30, 50 years, depending on the diagnosis, depends on the longevity. We have a lot of people with special needs that their diagnosis has a shortened lifespan, but we have other diagnoses that have a lifespan that is typical to someone without special needs. We do webinars on basically all of these topics, and on our YouTube channel, we have playbacks of all of these. Texas waivers and interest list. I certainly don't want to step on anybody, because I'm sure that, most people have heard of the Texas waivers and the interest list. And this interest list is, they say anywhere from 14 to 17 year waiting list right now. So Texas isn't great when it comes to these waivers as far as people getting services. But once you do get it, it's a great thing. So we have webinars on how to get on the interest list. It's important to know that just because you say you're on the list doesn't mean you're on class. Class is a different list to get on than HCS and Texas Home Living. But because these lists are long, you do want to get your loved one on there. And proof of qualification happens at the time that you come up on the list, not the time that you put your name on the list. Okay. So just want to make sure, if you're not on there, your local intellectual disability authority, some people call it a LIDA. I've heard it called LIDA. I've heard it called LIDA, whatever you call it. For, various counties have different ones. The Harris County, for instance, is going to be the Harris Center, which used to be MRA. today. Fort Bend County is texting in it. And so, we have the ability to look up your LITA. If you don't know that, we can look that up. But basically, contacting them is how you're going to get on their list. We do a lot of talks about SSI, SSDI, understanding the differences and knowing when to apply, having money in the right bucket so you don't disqualify. We are able to help people set up ABLE accounts. We have presentations on that. It's important to have your beneficiary designation set up properly. What a lot of people do on accident is they name their special needs child outright as a beneficiary on life insurance or investment accounts or things like that. And that's basically a no-no, because that is going to put more money than what SSI allows for SSI and Medicaid. And so there are right ways to go about doing that. And that's basically going to be through special needs trust. And depending on if the child has their own money or if their money comes through life insurance or gifts or things like that, will depend on whether or not a person needs a first party special needs trust or a supplemental needs trust, also known as a third party. And sometimes a person needs both. It just depends on their unique situation. We suggest, if you're in a transition mode, to start touring residential living facilities as early as age 15 or 16. Some of these waiting lists can be 5 years. Okay, so if you're anticipating moving to a group home or moving into some kind of other alternative care arrangement, once your child turns 18, 21, 22, depending on what the facility is, depends on what year, what age that they will take them. But start looking at these. And we do have lists of these. They don't work for us and we don't work for them. But we do have some lists that we've put together of places that are across the state. Some take waivers, some are private pay, and they work with any number of disabilities. So some might be a good fit for you, but they might not be a good fit for your best friend's son that also has a disability. So you'll just have to check that out. Guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and supported decision-making are all things to consider. Guardianship can be applied for 6 months in advance prior to a child turning 18. Someone asked, how do I feel about alternatives to guardianship? So again, we do have a lot of webinars on this on our YouTube channel. There is a such thing as basically partial guardianship in Texas, and we also have the supported decision-making agreement. Supported decision-making is not really available in a lot of other states, but it is available in Texas. So everybody's situation is uniquely different, and the mindset of guardianship has changed in Texas over time. And so one of the suggestions is that they assume first that you don't need guardianship. So it used to be, if you had a special needs loved one, then clearly you need guardianship. You should get guardianship. That's it. And then they've kind of changed their, again, you're taking rights away to drive, rights away to get married, and different things like that, depending on the type of guardianship that a person gets. So working with a qualified attorney on this will help identify what you need or what you don't need. And I think a lot of it has to do with can the child sign a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney and have the capacity to understand what they're signing. So basically, if a child has, like, for instance, my daughter has the capacity to sign a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney, her disability doesn't rob her mind, okay? And it robs other things, but so she has the capacity and understanding. So if you have a person that has intellectual disabilities, you have basically an IQ below 70, it is basically assumed that they don't have the capacity to understand what they're signing in power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. So that therefore a guardianship might be the better route to go. But again, there's a guardian. If you're going through the guardianship process, again, you can start at 6 months prior to the child turning 18. There are fees involved with guardianship, and I would say on the low end, anywhere of $2,500 all the way on up to $500 on $5,000 on a non-contested guardianship. So that, and kind of anywhere in between. But so again, just listen to those, the webinars that we have on that. this is something that if you, so what if your child is past 18 and you didn't get guardianship? So it's not too late. And the other thing a person needs to know is we do see a lot of people with disabilities that developmentally, they're not where they need to be at 18. They're not in a capacity to make the decisions that they need to make at age 18, but they might be later. So just because you do get guardianship doesn't mean it has to be permanent. And the individual with disabilities and their maturity level and things change, people can get their rights back. So it's just something to think about. Another thing is post-high school education options. We do a lot of talks about post-high school educational options for kids with disabilities and funding, scholarships, and other things like that, and things to think about that. We talked about the waiting list for the community-based care facilities, and we talked about our YouTube channel. So today's meeting is being recorded. So either later today or tomorrow, you'll get an email with the recording, with a link to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, or whatever. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you will be able to access any of those other webinars that I was talking about as it relates to these other topics. Let me see if we have a few additional questions. So someone asked if I have a list of out-of-state residential living facilities, and no, that is a great question. We do not have that. We do not have that together. I think that there's so many across the states. I mean, we do see more and more people finding good facilities in the state of Utah. Okay, and Utah is a state that is known for working well with people with special needs. So we see a lot there, but we don't. We've really focused on more on the both partial residential day hab programs and full residential programs that are in and around the state of Texas. And so that may be something that we could put together in the future, but that's a great question. Let's see. Okay, so I think that we have addressed the questions, but as it relates to the letter of intent, give yourself some grace. You don't have to create the letter of intent overnight. Okay, maybe give yourself a 90-day window. Like, I'm going to start this process, and I like to do it in 90 days, and sit down with it for an hour at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself, because like I said, our letter of intent is 20 pages. It's form fillable, but it is 20 pages, so it's not like kind of a one sitting activity. And then as it relates to planning and taking the next step, we're here to help you. We're happy to consult with you on your unique situation, and we're not here to tear down any good planning that you've already done. We're always happy to hear that. And kind of wherever you are on, as it relates to planning and what steps that you've taken, each step that you take is moving yourself a little bit closer to achieving the results and the goals that you want to achieve. So certainly feel free to reach out to us and talk to us about your unique situation. Also in our email that'll go out later today or tomorrow, we'll also have a link where you can schedule a free consultation with us should you want to do that. And our letter of intent template, we do for people that work with us. We provide that free of charge. The letter of intent template, that's something that we put out there free of charge. People that have consultations, I don't have a problem sharing that. So if that's something that you're interested in, just reach out and schedule a consultation, and we'll be happy to get that out to you. I think that again, what I will tell you is it's not something that you can't create. So I don't want you to feel like that this isn't, that this is something that you have to have, or you can create this. I think the template is probably a little bit easier because it kind of jogs your memory of the things that should be on there, and then you can add additional areas that are important to you. And I think that having it form fillable, I think, is probably helpful. So having said that, I've got 12:30. We finished early, and I just would like to open it up to see if there's any other questions. And other than that, then I think we'll jump off. Gail, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Someone did ask, how can we get a copy of it? You answered that. No, I think
Okay.
we'll be good. We'll be good.
Okay. Well, again, thank you again to Gail Wright and Partners Resource Network. And again, Partners Resource Network, there's so many great organizations in the state of Texas of resources and help for families with special needs. And so I've, made it a point to be a student of these organizations and understand what's out there, because you don't have to do everything alone. It is difficult. And I think part of the passion that drives me, and I always think I should share this in the beginning, and I never, get going kind of sharing my own personal story. I always just say, I work professionally and personally as it relates to special needs. But what I will say is that when my daughter was transitioning a couple years ago, I felt frustrated. I felt very frustrated. I do this for a living. This is what I do. And I felt frustrated on how difficult everything has to be. It's not easy. And so if I do this for a living, and I can tell you it's not easy, it's not something, and again, I said that my daughter doesn't have intellectual disabilities. She's a smart young lady. Her body doesn't always cooperate, but this is it's no feat for most adults, most families that we work with. They were working with us because they're so frustrated and they feel like they're beating their head against the wall. Or what do I do with SSI? They feel almost a panic of, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, there's all these moving parts, and I have to do this, and the IEP, and these accommodations, and all this guardianship and special needs trust, and what do I do? And how do I make social SSI not mess them up? And there's just so many things. And what I would say is that's kind of the reason behind our madness and all these webinars that we put out in this education, because we want to make your journey a little bit easier. Because me personally, I know what I know and I do what I do. And I felt like it was really difficult. So I just wanted to say that to you. So that way, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed and stressed about the whole situation, it's okay. It's not alone. You're not alone. And we can take off some of that burden from you. So anyway, that's all I got for today, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And if we can be of assistance to you going forward, please feel free to reach out. Take care.